Hey, welcome everybody to Ministry Hustle, doing ministry on a budget or lack thereof. Um, we uh, we have some experience there. My name is Jeff Moores. I am a pastor at a church called North Coast down in Oceanside, California. The young adult pastor as well as one of our venue pastors. Um, it's a larger church and we actually have a budget. It's exciting because I did ministry for a number of years on a spending freeze. Anybody ever heard spending freeze before? Churches on a spending freeze. That's how we. That's how I lived for about 10 years of doing youth and young adult ministry of like 300 young people, but I was never able to take any money from the church because we were always on a wonderful spending freeze. But anyways, that's who I am. That's what I do currently, as well as we do Think International, me and Sean together. It's a good time. Then I'll let Sean introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Sean. I'm from Las Vegas, and so my primary thing is kind of doing Ocean's 11 type stuff, and so I work with a team of people, and then I also work at the church, and churches don't pay very well, so that's why I have to do. No, I don't do any Ocean's 11 stuff, and for those who don't know, that was the movie and George Clooney, and they knock off casinos and rob casinos. But anyway, so I work at a church. I'm the director of communications at a church. So I do a lot of media and video and social media. And Jeff and I have really known each other, and we were co-leading in ministry for like about 10 years now. And so was right there alongside him doing video, media, creative stuff, again, with like no budget and being on spending freezes. So, hustling to make things happen and to find resources and things like that, which is what we're going to kind of be touching on today. Live in Las Vegas with my beautiful wife and my two chihuahuas. And so they're great and love them. And so let's jump into it.
And I'm married too, and I have 3 kids. Thank you. I was gonna say, if people offer chihuahuas but not for kids, but this is a children's ministry conference, people, you need more for the kids than the dogs. Okay, dogs ministry comes later. No, we're gonna get to stuff, and then like Sean said, we're gonna get to Q&A as fast as we can because we really believe that we want to give you some great principles, but we also want to be able to help you dream up and figure some stuff out too, as well for your own ministries. One of the things that's really helped us is we've been able to successfully create ministries that attract resources, and a lot of times that's one of our biggest issues is that a lot of when we're not having resources coming to our ministries, it's because they're not attracting those resources. So there's something broken in there somewhere, and it doesn't mean that we're necessarily doing something wrong. It just means that we might need to tweak some stuff to fix them just a tad bit. So here's some practical ways to get things done. Number one is know who you are and what you want your program to be, program/ministry. You got to know who you are and what you want your program to be. A lot of us sit in ministries or lead ministries that aren't us. And they're ministries that we wouldn't even want to be a part of. But we stepped into a role or a position that we kind of feel trapped in, but we stepped in to take over maybe for somebody who left or something like that. But we need to know who we are and what we want our ministry to be, what we want it to be like. I think it was Picasso that said, good artists copy, but great artists steal. Good artists copy, but great artists steal. And the church is really good at copying what other churches do, but they just become then a copy of a ministry. If you want to be great, you got to see what's out there. You got to steal it. You got to make it your own. You don't want to just be a cheap imitation or a copy. You want to steal it. You want to make it yours, and it's good to see what other people are doing, other ministries are doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to copy exactly what it is they're doing. You want to see elements that you like, and you want to steal it. You got to make it yours, and you have to adapt it to your area of ministry. We're from the States, and so in the States, there's this thing called the Bible Belt. You ever heard of the Bible Belt? The Bible Belt is predominantly South, and if you're from the Bible Belt, well, you just grow up knowing about Jesus and loving Jesus, and everybody goes to church at the Bible Belt. Whether you're heathen or not, you just go to church. So in the Bible Belt, they come up with a lot of exciting things to do in ministry. But I'm from the West Coast, and I'm from Southern California, and it don't work in Southern California what works in the Bible Belt. Not at all. Uh, uh, we are a completely different culture, gigantic country, and I'm sure it's the same way in Canada as well. East Coast Canada, way different than West Coast Canada. Yukon, maybe even more different. I heard in the Yukon that there. Anyone in here from the Yukon? Okay, but I've heard that there's they just have like a porch with like dead animals hanging that they cut the meat straight off of and they go cook it up. Is that true? I'm asking really. Is that okay? Anyway, okay. There you go. Exactly. I knew it. Okay, so a little bit different context of what it's like something that works up there might not necessarily work where you're at. So finding it, maybe that idea and adapting it to where you're from, to your culture, is definitely huge. Don't be afraid to steal from the secular as well. You know that secular companies, restaurants, theme parks, all that stuff, they pour millions and millions of dollars into finding out what attracts and keeps children. So walk in there, look around, and take all their ideas. What is it? The wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. There we go. Take some of what they've done, and again, just adapt it into your context, into your church world. Steal it, make it yours. See what your ministry could be. Go into areas. I really highly suggest this, that you would go into areas that are very children centric and very children popular. Sit down and absorb everything. Figure out. Listen. What music are they playing right now? Because I guarantee you they're playing music, and a lot of stuff that we don't consciously realize, we subconsciously realize. What music are they playing right now? These chairs that we're sitting in, why are they the colors they are? What's on the walls? Why is it on the walls? Start asking yourselves all sorts of questions and figure out what it is that you can take and adapt into your ministry. Number 2, once you figure who you are and what you want your ministry to be, you need to begin to communicate the vision and create the program that people want to be a part of. Communicate the vision and create the program that people want to be a part of. You have to believe in your own ministry yourself. You've got to believe it completely. And my pastor, Larry Osborne. He's actually the godfather of video venues. He's the one that started the whole video venue movement. But he always says, why would you create a church that you wouldn't want to go to? And I'd say the same thing. Create a children's ministry or ministry or program that you would want to be a part of, that you would want to go to, that you would want to volunteer in. That if you wouldn't be running it, you would still want to be there. As a young adult pastor, I created a young adult ministry that if I was not the pastor of, I would kick, fight, scream, find some way to be a volunteer in that ministry because of what's going on in it. Communicate and show convincingly what that is. If we're not communicating it and showing convincingly what it is, no one's going to know what it is. And no one's going to want to be a part of it because they'll have no clue. If you are not the person to communicate convincingly, because we all have different gifts, we were all set up differently, find somebody who can. Find somebody who can. Grab hold of them. Tell them over coffee what it is you really believe that this ministry should be. Get them behind it so that they can communicate convincingly and passionately what it is that you guys are going to do in your program and in your ministry. Because that's what's going to attract the resources and the people. That's what's going to attract the resources and the people. And not only that, it's going to attract the people's stuff. The people's stuff. Whether it's their cameras, their equipment they have, as their kids get older, all their old little tykes things. I mean, everything that you would need for your ministry. It's actually, you'd be surprised, it's actually already in your church. It's already there. People just don't necessarily know there's a need yet that they should give to, because it hasn't been communicated specifically and passionately enough. And the other thing too, I think Mike hit it during that dinner time last night. But nobody wants to be a part of a ministry that's a downer. And man, I know firsthand, um, when you're doing ministry and you're trying and stuff just isn't working at times, or you're not getting your budget, you can get extremely bummed out, extremely bummed out. Um, but if every time somebody talks to you and they're like, "Man, hey, how's ministry going?" "Oh, it's hard. It's hard. I'm just tired." No, if you of course you want to be honest. Please don't hear that, like put on the smiley face and everything's good and happy and praise the Lord, hallelujah, woo. But but you want to then evaluate though, like why would you want to volunteer in a ministry where the guy always seems burned out and done? Do you know what I mean? In all honesty, I mean we always want to be a part of something that's hopping and that's rocking and that you don't go to a restaurant where the food sucks. You know, you go to a restaurant where it's cracking. There's good eats and people are having fun. Uh, Now, I say this again, having come from a ministry. My wife was a children's pastor, by the way, for 4 years. And I was the youth pastor. She was the children's pastor. We had offices right next to each other. Um, it actually wasn't very good for our marriage, but it was an interesting time. And we lived on a spending freeze. She had a children's ministry with maybe 150 kids and no money for it. Like I said, out of youth ministry, weekly anywhere between 200 to 300 young people, and no money for it. So we had to attract people that were willing and wanting to be a part of what we were doing. I was the only paid staff for the youth ministry. At one point, I tried to get this guy like a few $100 to help me out a month, like, just because he was a faithful servant. He rocked. He was incredible. But they nixed that. I mean, like, talk about brutal. You know what I mean? And how do you put on a program for 150 kids weekly? How do you put on a program for 200 to 300 young people weekly when you've got no money to do it? We had to attract the resources, we had to attract the people, and we had to attract the people with the resources that were all in, that were bought into it. And so I had to get up, and I was convincing, because I really believed in the ministry that I was doing. I really believed in the ministry that I was a part of. And so I'd get up and I would preach our vision. I'd get excited, and so all of a sudden there'd be people around us that were excited, and they would be offering their. I mean, my wife's children's workers every week would buy their own candy and goodies and stuff for the kids, and they would show up and they would do it. And I'll get into that just a little bit later, but it was just because she believed in what she was doing. She'd created an environment that people wanted to be a part of, a team that people wanted to be a part of. Number 3, seeing the possibilities instead of the impossibilities. Seeing the possibilities instead of the impossibilities. As a people, generally, we can be more bent towards the negative and seeing the reasons why things can't happen as opposed to the reasons why things can happen. We tend to see all the times in our schedules that we're not able to meet or we're not able to connect with other people, as opposed to seeing all the times in our schedules where we are. We have to see the possibilities that there is a way that it can be done, and there's a time that we can do it. There is a way that we can pull off this children's event. There is a way that we can. There is a way, and we may not necessarily know that way yet. But if we can start to think that way, if we can start to think the possibilities as opposed to the impossibilities, as opposed to we don't have any money to do it, we don't necessarily have the facility to make it happen, and we don't have the volunteer base to rock it. So why are we even going to do it? As opposed to, well, we may not have the facility yet, but we're going to find one. We may not necessarily have the resources yet, but we're going to figure that out. We may not have the volunteer base yet, but you know what? I saw about 3 people at the church just kind of standing around. I might just be able to grab them and make them do something. And we begin to see those possibilities as opposed to the impossibilities. But we have to train ourselves to do it. We have to train ourselves to think thrifty, think homemade, and think creatively. Think thrifty, think homemade, and think creatively. Think thrifty, think homemade, and think creatively. I know a youth pastor friend of mine. He's not at this church anymore, but he went to a pretty famous church, and he told me their lighting budget for a month just for their youth ministry was $70,000 for a youth ministry. He said that every Wednesday their green room was catered with P.F. Chang's. It's like a really fancy Chinese restaurant. And I just looked at him. Like, what do you say to that? Like, well, sometimes I buy coffee for my staff, like what the heck, And I have a guy that kind of runs a light board that's makeshift, what's up now? But I mean, I couldn't think like that. I couldn't even think in terms of the lighting budget of $70,000. Could not even think like that at all. It was nuts. But I could think lighting. And I could think, how could we get lighting in this building? We've got beams here. And I started, I'm telling you, me and one of my homies in things. So we went to Home Depot and we got some pipes. We thought thrifty, we thought like cheap. And we made those pipes together and we screwed them into the beams. And then we got some old can lights, so we found some old can lights. And we thought, well, they're not LED lights, but we can throw some gels in there. We can just find some colored plastic and tape it. We don't care. If it starts on fire, it's like an effect. Woo! And that, man, we were like connecting, we screwed them on there. We ran wires. It was like we drilled into the ceiling. It was nuts, but we saw the possibilities and we thought thrifty. We thought, how can we pull this off, as opposed to going, well, we don't have any LED lights. We don't have any light bars. We won't be able to make this happen. Oh well, it was a good thought. But we began to think thrifty. There's all sorts of ways that can help you today to do this, by the way. Everybody say, Google it. Come on, say it with conviction. Say, Google it. Google it. If you ever have an idea and you want to know how to pull it off, Google it. Or if you ever need an idea, just literally Google children's ideas. There's like a plethora. Google it. Google is awesome. Pinterest. How many Pinterest people in here? Woo! All ladies. That's great. All ladies. Pinterest. Pinterest is huge. You can get on there and you can find all sorts of ways to do things, and they tell you how to do it cheaply, how to do it incredibly. My daughter the other day, she's got this thing called Gold Rush Days because the California Gold Rush is a really big deal, and so she had to make this pouch. And instead of coming up and saying, "Hey, Dad, I really need a pouch for our Gold Rush Day. Can you drive me to Target and spend $15 on like a little fake leather satchel?" For one thing, if she did, I'd be like, "Girl, you're crazy. I love you, but no." Instead, what she did is she goes, "Hey, do you have an old shirt that you're not using?" I was like, well, I got plenty of old shirts I'm not using. And so she took one of those old shirts, she cut it up, got out this little sewing kit and like sewed this little pouch thing together. She took something old and made it new, and she had an idea and she did it. And I think that like there's so many old resources that are in your church already that you could repurpose and you could make them new. Just got to get an idea for it. There's a website called Etsy. Ever heard of Etsy? ETSY. Etsy. It's all homemade products. Now, you can get on there and you can try to buy those homemade products because some people want a lot of money for their homemade stuff. But you can look at it. You can get an idea on how you can make a cool, prop for your children's program, or how you can make some kind of cool mood lighting and whatnot for it. Because all they've done is just taken what's crafty and they've put it together. And they want you to buy it. Well, you can put it together yourself, or you can find somebody in your church that is crafty. I just want to before I forget, because it just came to mind, one of the best untapped resources in every church is stay-at-home moms and people that have retired people. And I think a lot of times we take our senior ministry, our seniors in our church, and we just kind of push them aside. We say, "Man, God bless you, old saints in the Lord," and we completely forget that they are unbelievably capable. They've got a lot of time, and you'd be surprised they got a lot of resources still, and they want to be used, and they can be used. And then eBay is another one you can find a lot of great stuff for. On Craigslist, you can find a lot of incredible things, a lot of cheap things just on Craigslist. We don't always have to go through the brand new ministry catalog that showed up on our to our church with all sorts of stuff that's overpriced and way overpriced, by the way, for what it is that you need. Number four, beg, borrow, and steal. Kind of already hit steal. You'll hear that a lot throughout here. But beg, borrow, and steal. Beg, ask people for stuff. Ask and ye shall receive. Ask people for stuff. Use what they have for the ministry. Like I said, now I've got a budget that I could actually use because I'm at a church that has some money. But it's not even a great budget. It's not unreal, but it's good. I mean, it's a bigger church. It's around 9,000 people on a weekend, and so we've got the resources, if that makes sense. But I will still, within my ministry, I still take advantage in a good way. I don't mean like, I'm taking advantage of you, I'm a creep, but I'll take advantage of like we have interns. Our interns, they work for free. They see the ministry, they want to be a part of it, so they work for free. They come in, they have required office hours, and I ask to use their stuff because I can't provide each of them with a computer. I mean, I could. That would eat up my budget. But they use their own computers, their own laptops. If we're going to film something, they use their own cameras. They use their own, if they have like a 7D or whatever it is, they use their own stuff. I ask them to. I mean, I don't expect it, but I ask them to. Because they can. And believe it or not, they actually want to. My small group leaders, they all buy their own snacks for their own groups. Because they believe in what they're doing. You have to allow people to give to your ministry because it helps them feel more vested in that ministry. Does that make sense? Allowing people to give to your ministry and even asking them to at times helps them feel more vested in it. Because not only are they giving themselves their time, but they're giving of their resources. Anything you give your resource to, you want it to succeed. If you're going to invest in a company, do you want that company to fail? No. That's the correct answer is no. You want it to succeed. And same thing with ministry. Ministry that you're investing in, your time, your money, and whatnot, you want it to succeed. Take advantage of what's free. There's a lot of free stuff out there. Google Ads. There's free blogs. Like your website, you can actually just have it a blog site. Hillsong New York, their website is a free blog site. I mean, talk about a budget. I mean, Hillsong's got a budget, but they still choose you. Actually, will you talk about Google Ads a little bit and whatnot?
Yeah, one cool thing to take down as far as a phenomenal resource that'll blow your mind, and actually, I hope this is true in Canada, because it is true in the U.S., but has anybody signed up for Google Apps for nonprofits? You have? And it's phenomenal. So Google Apps, APPS, for nonprofits, it's free. Now, businesses pay to do all their administration, connection, emails, Google Calendar, Google Docs. You can share PowerPoints amongst people, Word documents amongst people. You can get free email accounts with your name at your church website.ca. And you get all your email accounts, which normally you would eventually pay for to get them on your church, all for free. But after you've signed up for Google for nonprofits, what you need to do is apply. It'll take a little while to get approved, possibly 3 to 6 months, but do it tonight and just get the ball rolling. Because after you apply, you can now apply for free Google advertising. It's going to blow your mind. $10,000 a month they will give to you as a nonprofit in Google AdWords advertising. And if you use it every month, they'll bump it up to $25,000 per month. And so even for our ministry, Think International, we currently are accessing that. And so what does that mean? It means on websites and things. And this is more of a great way to just get the word out about your church. Share this with your creative director, your pastor, to let your church, get known of in a city. And it's not organic search, but it's where you see those ads when you just type a search in google.ca. Those are the AdSense that you'll start getting. Literally all of that free advertising. So that's a huge practical thing to apply for.
It's gigantic. And I got to say too that with that, part of my wife and I, when we were in between churches, or my family, I should say, when we were in between churches for a little while, One of the things that really uh, uh, determined whether we went back to a church or not was the children's ministry. And when searching online, I really think this is one of like the really a shortcoming of our church. But when searching online, you have to dig on a website to find the children's ministry on that website. When that was honestly what brought us back to a church. I mean, I don't care if the preacher blew the roof off the building. I mean, I care. But if my kids came out of children's ministry and they were bummed out, we weren't going back there. Didn't matter how phenomenal the worship was. Didn't matter how incredible it was. But if my children were like, and this actually happened. There was a church that the preacher, eh, you know, didn't necessarily appreciate him too much. I mean, I appreciated him because he's a brother in the Lord, but he wasn't really hitting me with anything. But my kids came out every weekend, psyched, stoked, so excited. They called it the popcorn church because every weekend you could pay a quarter and get a bag of popcorn. They loved it. They had some little slides and whatnot. They were so excited. So we just kept going back to that church until we moved south to San Diego, aka Heaven on Earth. Um, have anyone ever been to San Diego before? Oh, you got to go there one day. You got to go there one day. It's unbelievable. Um, but yeah, so take advantage of the Google ads. Take advantage of creating a website, blog, getting yourself out there. It's all free, all free. Number 5, treat volunteers well and have high expectations. People's time and energy is a free resource that oftentimes they want to give. I kind of hit this a little bit earlier, but also be very aware of their station in life when it comes to their commitment level. Churches are very good at burning people out because oftentimes when you get a yes person, they say yes to everything. And they'll continue to say yes, and they'll continue to say yes. And then we love that they say yes, so we'll ask them again and again and again and again. And oftentimes that leads to them burning out, and then they're in your office going, I don't think I can do this anymore. And have high expectations. Yeah, high expectations. Oh, I'm sorry. Um, so being aware of their stations in life are huge. Like I said, a great stay-at-home moms are a great resource as well as those that are retired. But then kind of realizing too that you're going to have some people that are like some soccer moms and dads and whatnot, where they don't have necessarily a lot of time, but they do want to give and they do want to volunteer. But you don't necessarily want to heap too much onto their plates because they'll end up in your office saying, I can't do this anymore. And then we lose them, then we lose them. And then they lose out on the experience of being a part of a ministry possibly that God has called them to. So be aware of their stations in life, but also have those high expectations. That if somebody says they're going to do something, make sure they do it. If you have, sometimes what hurts us is that we're very desperate for leaders. And so we put up with anything and everything. It's better to have a strong team of 3 than a wobbly team of 10. High expectations. You think because a lot of times we think that like they're doing us a favor. A lot of times we're doing them a favor because we're allowing them to be a part of a ministry that's impacting children's lives. It's they're building treasure in heaven, and for some, if you can, it's free training. They're getting free ministry on the job training. That's what for my interns. That's what I consider that they're getting a lot of behind the scenes knowledge of what takes place in a ministry. Reward your team without paying them, basically paying them without paying them. Bringing them to conferences. Some of you guys might be that volunteer that got to come to this conference, and you're stoked that you get to come to and be a part of stuff like this. Reward them. Paying without paying is like taking them to coffee. Throwing a party for your children's team where they come over to your house and you've got the spread, the food laid out. It may take a little bit of your may take a little bit of your little budget, but it's going to have a gigantic return because they're going to feel valued, as well as paying them with encouraging words. Encouraging words. Taking people aside and just telling them that they're appreciated. I know what it's like to bust my butt in ministry, to get paid very little. Our ministry was 150 people before I was even full-time. And to bust my butt in ministry and to just hear criticism. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to not hear a word and to be told, well, hey, if you don't hear from me, it's because you're doing all right. Well, if I'm doing all right, tell me I'm doing all right. Like, at least give me a pat on the back, a high five, a way to go, slugger, like something exciting. But, to just say nothing, or when something does bad happen, when you call me in your office and you rail me for about 15 minutes and why I'm not, good enough, like it's no good. So taking your volunteers aside and just saying, you guys are incredible. Thank you so much for what you do. I took one of my interns aside yesterday, last weekend I should say, and said, George, I want you to know. I fully appreciate everything that you do for this ministry, and I love serving with you. I absolutely love it, George. Like, I'm really glad that you're a part of this team. You add so much to this ministry. And he's like, man, I just love being a part of it. Thank you so much. And he posts on social media, about it. And it's just so much. It cost me nothing. And all I got to do is really just speak my heart to somebody. And it's easy for us in the hustle and the bustle of ministry to really forget, because we think it, like, oh, there's Julie, she's doing a great job, and look at Greg's over there, man, what a great guy, he's so good with those kids, it's awesome, and then we just go on about our day, but we never tell them. Telling them is a huge payment, which will have huge returns on it. Play favorites. Play favorites. It's okay that if you have a leadership team and you have your favorites. Now, this is a lot of time people don't like that. Like, wait a minute, this is ministry. Everything's fair. Everything's like, if you do one for that person, you got to do it for them and do it for them. No, you don't. No, you don't, because that person gives a whole heck of a lot more time, a whole heck of a lot more money, a whole heck of a lot more resources. Half your room is decked out by the pictures and whatnot that they made. They came, they painted the nursery, they did that stuff. You can play some favorites. It's okay. And if the dude that only, volunteers for 2 hours on the weekends is upset that, you're giving them a little bit more accolades, well, then he can find somebody else, somewhere else to minister, because that person has really vested and really poured into your ministry. Play favorites. Play favorites. Take them out to coffee more. From in front of people, say, hey, I want to thank, what's your name? Who? Diane. I want to thank Diane. She's been incredible. Absolutely. I mean, she's really good with the kids. That's the way I see her interact with their parents when they're picking the children up. Do you know that she tells every parent how well the child did that day? Do you know that she covers over for some of the child's mistakes? Which is huge when you're a parent picking up a child. If you hear, well, your kid was this and this and this and this and this, and you're like, oh man, my kid sucks. You walk away as opposed to like, man, it was great. I saw Jimmy pray for somebody today, and you're like, oh, Jimmy, good job. Like so. I just want to say, Diane, thank you so much for everything that you do for this ministry. Yeah. It's okay to do that stuff. It's good to do that stuff. And two, one of the things that is really huge that pays a bunch is when you give credit to those in your ministry. When you give credit to those in your ministry. Like after Easter, you say, we just handled twice the amount of kids that we did, and it's all because of you. Now, you more than likely spent the 40, 50 hours a week before setting it all up, designing the rooms, setting up the teams, figuring out how the logistics of everything are going to work, and they just came in, hung out for 2 hours, played with some kids, taught some Sunday school things and whatnot, did some crafts, and maybe were crazy on stage with the mic, but then they left. But you give them the credit because they made it happen. And that will carry you. That will pay your volunteers without paying them huge. And then number 6, ways to generate money. Generate money. So like I said, I did a ministry, never on a spending freeze, and oftentimes I generated enough money to where they would take from my ministry and give to other ministries in the church. which is always great. Because being like, I thought I had $3,000 in the bank, and they'd be like, well, actually, we gave half of that over to small groups ministry. And you're like, oh, that's good. Glad they got half my budget. Generate money. Kids are a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. The toy companies, the electronic companies, they've all figured it out. And they put a ton of marketing and advertising into getting kids to spend their parents' money. We should do the same. Get kids to spend their parents' money. I mean, when you think about it, kids are expensive. My kids are expensive. I've got 3 kids. One just got braces. Are you flipping kidding me? Yeah. I've got kind of crappy dental insurance, and then you add on braces. That's like $7,000. Her mouth better be worth it at the end of this thing. I mean, she better have a smile and whatnot. And tell you when I'm older, I'm I'm like, honey, you need to take care of me now. Anyways, but so I mean, we've got that. We've got 2 girls in soccer. You know how much I pay for them to kick a ball around a field? Gosh, are you joking me? Glasses, doctor's bills. I mean, they say on average, at least in the States, that a kid from the time they're born to the time they graduate high school is about $250,000 to raise. I believe every single, it's nuts. And then you add on top of college, and they say it's anywhere then to like 300 to $500,000 for these kids to do that. So kids are expensive, and parents are used to spending money for their kids and on their kids. Not to mention, a buddy of mine just brought all 4 of his boys. They stayed at our house. Great couple, love them. And I think 3 of their boys, the older ones, all had tablets, their own personal tablets. They're not super rich, and they're not like you didn't roll in and like, what's up, dude? But I mean, they found ways to spend the money on their kids, Black Friday and whatnot, to get their kids these things. Parents will spend money on kids, and the unnecessary money on kids. What is in your ministry that you can sell your children? And this sounds bad. Please don't. I'm not like some sleazeball that's like, but kids love stuff. They love the little bracelets. Every time we're walking out of the store, we pass through candy aisles where you can buy for $1 a whole box of candies. They walk by the little machines where you're going to turn a knob and get like 3 pieces of candy, but they want to spend the money on that. They want to drop Dad, you got a quarter, you got 2 quarters, there's a gumball in there. There was a pack of gum for 25 cents in the other aisle. Like, why do you want to but they want to do that stuff just because they love that. So why not give them something that they can spend their money on that generates money for your ministry, that allows them to feel a part of the ministry, i.e. a bracelet or something that says, Happy Kids Church Ministry or whatever, fill in the blank of your ministry, or a cool little t-shirt or the little necklace or whatever it is. For a long time, all these kids were into those silly bands. You guys remember silly bands? Were silly bands up here? Man, my kid, we were spending money on rubber bands. Rubber bands that were shaped like something. What? I mean, like silly bands for your ministry. But recognizing what is it that the kids are spending money on, and give them something that's going to generate. They're going to spend their money on it anyways at Target. They're going to spend their money on it anyways at, whatever department store. They might as well spend it on there. Get a cool bracelet, get a cool t-shirt. It raises money for your ministry. Make t-shirts. T-shirts are a great way to make money, by the way, because you can get them printed, done up, everything for around $5 to $6, then you can sell them for 12 to 15. And you get parents that are jazzed on your ministry. They're going to support your ministry. They're going to buy their t-shirt. Hey, we made a special parents t-shirt from our children's ministry. Parents are like, oh, what, cool. And if you're able to do that, you're able to generate some finances and stuff for your ministry. And also just paying attention to current trends and current what the kids are into. The current trends are huge. Finding, if you try to do silly bands now, you would lose money because nobody cares about silly bands anymore. But what's this next kind of current trend with kids? Is it those little eraser heads? Well, have little eraser heads done up with your ministry on there, or If you have a ministry mascot, you guys you understand what I'm saying? Did you have a hand up over there? Was there a hand up? No? Okay. Anyways, finding things cheaper. Also, if you can find things cheaper, sell them. A lot of times people want to donate something. If you don't need it for your ministry, take it and sell it. Take it and sell it. Take it and sell it. Okay, with that, that's ministry hustle, making it work. You guys have any questions? Situations, things that you would like some answers to, questions that you have about what we just talked about? The least equipment as possible. Google it. Google it. Google it, and as well as you can look on eBay, and you can find all sorts of old children's ministry, youth ministry, games, books like that from old youth specialty stuff that people are just clearing out. And they have a lot of great stuff. And then it's just taking it and adapting it. It says that we need this, this, and this. Well, we can do without that. And, yeah, I used to do youth ministry, and we do these games. One time we just had a bunch of old McDonald's balls that were donated to us. We already had chairs in the facility. So we set up this gauntlet. So it's like this thing they had to run through and not get pelted by the other team that just stood up there and threw balls at them. Just thinking stuff like that up and going for it. Finding somebody in your church that's creative like that. They'll just be like, oh, I can give me a quarter and I'll have 50 kids playing for days. You're like, why did you do that? Well, they do it. Yeah. Hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, side note, by the way, mention to every business that you're a nonprofit. Mention that you're a nonprofit that helps kids. And businesses will just give you some stuff. You just, like I think a lot of times we forget that we're nonprofits that help kids, and so we go buy the stuff where, a lot of times Walmart will donate some stuff, and all these different stores they'll just donate certain things to you because you're a nonprofit that helps children. You have an event coming up. Hey, we have an event coming up. We're about to see 100 kids come through. Is there anything that you could, help us out with? We're looking for this, this, and this, and you'd be surprised what people will shell out for that. Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Painter's tape on the floor. Revolutionary right there. Yeah. Phenomenal. You should have taught this. That's great. That's awesome. That's awesome. Any other questions? I apologize. It's smoking hot in this room right now. It's a warm room. Yeah, I know, but it's like it just stays 70 year round where I'm from. We're on the coast, so I'm not. This is hot.
Here, as we land this plane, let me just share 2 questions to write down for yourselves, especially at this great conference. How great has this conference been, right? Woo! And so, talking about the ministry hustle and really how to do it, and circling back to Jeff's first point and second point of really having a vision, you can write this down, and maybe this is something you can work on even after this session and even past this conference. What is your vision? What is your vision for your kids' ministry? And some of you might actually have a vision statement. And if you don't, maybe start crafting one. We want to impact the children of this city and this region and have them meet Jesus Christ. Or maybe something more practical, like we just want to give them the best experience possible where they encounter Jesus and parents are happy. Or something very, clear like that. But what is your vision? What is your vision? Crafting that. And then take it a step further to say, if in 1 year everything was perfect in my kids' ministry, what would that look like? How many volunteers do you want? You have this many now. How many would you want then? What would you want the stage to look like? What would you want the walls to look like? What would you want the lighting to look like? What are some of the things that you would want? If you could have all of them, what are those? And it's important to, I think, write them down. What would you want for your kids' ministry? Really capturing a picture. Abraham in Genesis, God spoke to Abraham and he said, as far as you can see, I'll give it to you. As far as you can see, I'll give it to you. So the bigger our vision, we can start meeting it. Once we have a picture of where we want to end up, we can get there. If we go over to the Vancouver airport, walk up to the counter and say, yeah, I'd like one. You like one what? Well, I had a ticket. Well, you got to know where you want to go. I mean, that's the point of an airport, is to understand where your destination is. They don't sell it based on where you are, but based on where you're going. So if you've got a picture now, so those are just a couple questions. What's your vision? And then secondly, who in your church or in your ministry who is in your church or in your ministry or sphere of influence that you haven't discovered yet? I went to, when I first started at my church 2 years ago, we were doing a groups weekend, and I began to meet some people, and I met a guy named Andrew, and now we're great friends. And he had been going to the church with his family for 2.5 years, and they loved the kids ministry. His wife was actually serving the kids ministry, but turns out he was a phenomenal photographer, in fact so great that he was shooting for magazines, and he was getting all these jobs all throughout the city in Las Vegas, like one of the leading photographers in Las Vegas, and now he's serving at our church. But no one had ever met him, and he's shooting different events, and he just shot on Easter, and he was shooting the various things and the plays and the things we were doing in our kids' ministry. And so maybe it's like, we always see, well, we couldn't have great photography or great video or great things. I met another guy who we were just talking. And so if we're meeting people and rubbing shoulders outside of our sphere of influence, and we're discovering, and it turns out, and he goes, his name's Rob, and he says, yeah, I've got a recording studio at my house. Oh, you do? And he goes, yeah, a couple years ago when our business was doing really well, we just spent the $30,000 and had it put in. What? Our church doesn't have a recording studio, but this whole time he's been a gift in the house. And he loves to serve. He never made the connection of how it can maybe be used for ministry. So you could produce your own music or produce some videos and do some things that are maybe so beyond what your vision would normally be. It's not you doing it. There's gifts in the house. So just those 2 questions. What's your vision? Maybe start taking some notes. And if you could just jot down literally everything and go crazy. Man, you know what? If I was just dreaming big, I would do this, and I would put these lights in, and I'd get these screens, and I'd afford this curriculum, or I'd do this. And once you write that down, it becomes a step closer to being possible, and we can start believing for it. And then who is in your ministry right now that you haven't discovered yet? Start meeting people. Once the question has us start looking, and now we're on the pro. Have you ever been driving and you've been researching a car that you want? And maybe you would think profiling a car that you want. And so then you start driving around and you start seeing them everywhere. You start noticing the car. It's like my wife and I kind of want a Prius because we feel the environmental impact will be less. And so until I knew about a hybrid, I never saw them. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, they're everywhere. Well, they were always there. But I started to recognize them as we had the question. So who's in your church? So just a couple things. And I think with that, we're good to go. So thanks for coming out to Ministry Hustle.